All right, welcome everyone to Nebraska Product, probably the last Nebraska Product meetup for 2021. So we're excited to kind of finish it off strong with Ben talking about OKRs. But before we do that, want to keep giving a quick plug as we usually do to join our Slack channel. Not a ton of activity, but oftentimes where there's interesting articles, interesting opportunities for product discussions, design discussions, anything and everything. Product OKRs certainly fit into that. Come on over and post those thoughts in Nebraska Product. There's also a small jobs board in there too, where I do know a couple of folks have found new opportunities by posting there and connecting with the community. I will add this link into the comment section of the meetup. We've done it in the past. Would always be excited for folks to join the Slack channel. That's where this recording will be. That's typically where we post slides as well. So lots of benefits there. All right. So without further ado, we're going to welcome Ben to give the main part of the talk for this month. Really, companies that want to grow, reach out and try to find and work with Ben. He's written multiple books on OKRs. He's helped a ton of companies that are really well known. He came on my radar actually when I was talking to some Workiva folks, and they partnered very closely with Ben over time to go from a small Ames, Iowa company into kind of the Goliath that they are. So we're excited to welcome him. He's coached folks like 3M, Go Noodle, Thrasio. Again, he's really kind of the preeminent expert on OKRs and how to apply them. So Ben, I'm going to kind of hand it over to you and
I appreciate
let you take it away.
All right. Well, if you stop sharing, I'll start sharing. I mean, that's what Zoom wants me to do. It wants me to tell you that. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to take a great introduction. Now, boy, I feel really important now all of a sudden, so that's good. Hopefully my presentation will be good. Let me just see if I can make it into presentation mode and show my screen here. Bear with me. All right. I'm trying to do full screen at the same time. I'm trying to figure out where in the world did my Zoom thing go. All right. Is it Zoom? Yes. Okay. So let's see. Stop video. No. Show my screen. I'm actually really good at Zoom. So there it goes. Sometimes I have to maximize. Okay. And where did it go? Okay, I have to do this. If we can get through this, guys, it's going to all come together for you. Here we go. Boom. Are you seeing my screen? Full screen. Okay, great. All right. So, and by the way, the Workiva guys, I can go on record saying they were probably going to be really successful whether or not I helped them out, but they were a great group to work with. And I'll tell you, we played a lot of basketball over there, and they're really good at basketball. I'm not that good, but they're really good. And so I kind of got roughed up a little bit over there. So I think I'm sticking to OKRs more than playing basketball. All right. So with that, yeah, I think you did a great job introducing me. I'll just say I'm doing objective key results all over the world, many clients, all at different sizes and all that. And what I want to do in this workshop today, and Andrew and I have been talking on LinkedIn for a while, and it's always like, yeah, maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do this. And I'm like, yeah, I should do it. It feels good to talk to guys at the Nebraska Product Group. I'm really excited to be here. And I want to just give you guys a basic understanding of OKRs today. That's really the number one objective. I also want to look at some recent trends in OKRs coaching, and I might just talk about this somewhat glibly, and we'll have some time for questions as well. And I guess what I would say is you can always chime in with questions. I mean, it's not like we have this huge, massive group of people that are just listening to me. So chime in. I think Andrew will probably moderate if you want to put questions in the chat, things like that. That's fine. And actually, yeah, just put questions in the chat as they come, because then we'll at least have a log of some of the questions as they're coming. I want to start with, here are some general best practices of OKRs. And I call these the 5 mantras. And they're really important to follow. Like, I have to also hold myself accountable that I follow this, okay? The first is less is more. What do I mean by that? When you define a small set of OKRs, you tend to do better with OKRs. A lot of organizations I work with, they've got OKRs all over the place. They're setting OKRs at the individual person level. teams have 7 objectives, each with 5 key results. I mean, there's just OKRs everywhere. And yet the irony is they're trying to use OKRs to focus. If you look at crawl, walk, run, what do I mean by that? I mean, don't try to roll out OKRs across an entire organization like all at once. Probably obvious to people like you who know that, you need to prove concepts before you scale it. I have this thing here, scale it, then nail it. It's exactly the opposite of that. It's nail it, and then you scale it, right? But I think a lot of people do that. They scale it and they say, well, that didn't work. Now what do we do? Well, with OKRs in an organization, you can easily alienate people if you're not careful. Flipkart is a case study in India. And when I talked to this guy who created sort of the OKRs model for them, they're this huge company in India, like 30,000 people. It's kind of like the Amazon of India. They said, we do wish that we started at the highest level and lived at that level for a while before we started going down to various levels. That's a very common statement, okay? So what I'm trying to say is get OKRs right, at least at some part in the organization, whether it's the very top or the middle, I don't really care, some level of the organization, get it right before you start trying to expand the use of OKRs. Outcomes, not output. And in fact, you can't really see it because there it goes. Yeah, kind of, if it's in focus there. Anyway, this is a book. There it goes. Outcome is all reverse, all the text. Very small book, outcomes over output. I like the book. And you're hearing people talking more like this, especially product people, right? We like to talk about outcomes over output. But what I want you to think about when you write key results is try to get outcomes, which are really results, measurable results. Traditionally, that will be like changes in customer behavior or something that we can point to an impact, right, or an outcome, as opposed to look at how many features we delivered, or look at how many people we interviewed, or look at how many website posts we chatted on or something, right? Those are probably not going to be good key results. But most of the people who send me OKRs for my feedback, it looks like a to-do list. Update the blog, send flowers to the HR reception. I mean, these are actual things I've seen for key results. OKRs are not everything. What do I mean? I mean, some people try to cram all of their work into their OKRs. That's not what we're going to do. With OKRs, we're going to distinguish between here's what OKRs are, but here's what's not OKRs. We're not trying to get all of our work into OKRs. Now, the only way to learn OKRs is to do OKRs. Typically, if I was working with any of you, we would do a little bit of a training workshop, about half an hour to an hour, but we would then jump into the next hour or so, and we would just start doing OKRs and maybe we'll do a little bit of that today if we have time, because really the best way to learn OKRs is just start doing OKRs. So maybe, Andrew, I'll put you on the spot and try to come up with the OKRs for the Nebraska Product. All right, so how did I get into OKRs? I want to share this story because I sort of debate whether to share the story because it's all about how I got into OKRs. But I think you'll be able to relate to it. And it also shows you a little bit of the history of OKRs. This guy, Jeff Walker, happens to be my mentor and advisor in my early 30s. And he introduced me to OKRs. He made a presentation called Never Before Disclosed Oracle Planning Techniques. It was amazing. This guy is one of those amazing guys. You probably know something like this. Jeff Walker was the CFO of Oracle in the 80s. He was also the founder of Oracle Applications, which I can't spell. But what happened was Jeff was invited by Larry Ellison back when Oracle was a hardware company to start Oracle Applications. As you know, Oracle is a software company. I mean, I don't know, maybe they make hardware, but we know them as a software company. So actually, Jeff started Oracle, not Larry Ellison. And Larry Ellison will say that that's true. But what I'll tell you about this guy was there when Oracle was just skyrocketing, just doubling. And when they used OKRs, which was introduced by a guy named Gary Kennedy out of Intel, came to Oracle. What Jeff did is every team, he said, look, we're doubling every year. We have to have a system for knowing what in the world we're doing and how do we know we're getting there. And it's got to be the standard language across the organization. So they used the OKRs model. I was very scattered in my 30s. So the CEO of my company agreed to have Jeff join the board and kind of advise me on how to talk to leadership, because I would give updates. Jeff would call me on the phone and say, how's it going? Well, the webinar is full. We're working on hiring that person. We got bugs, but those guys are doing this. So basically I was giving him the answer, we're busy. Because I would say, look, we're operating all cylinders, Jeff, it's going great. Jeff would pause and he asked me this question, Ben, when you go on a hike, do you have a destination? And I was like, what is this guy talking about? So I started talking about my family. My daughter would go on a hike. She was like 6 years old. Well, maybe we had a place where we were going. We didn't exactly have a true destination. And he said, Ben, when I ask you about your personal life, I'm happy to hear about your daughter and how you like to hike all around and see a waterfall or whatever. But when you're at work and I ask you how it's going, Do you realize that the way that you just answered that question wasted my time? And do you realize that when you talk like that at the executive meeting, you're wasting everybody else's time? You have to start by telling me, here's the destination. And then you can tell me, how are we doing toward getting to that destination? And what are we doing in order to get there? So I was in the weeds conversation. It's just where I lived. You know, it's like when in product people talk about the backlog or something. Well, I live in the backlog. At some point, the leadership team doesn't want to hear about the backlog. In fact, some organizations are saying, forget the backlog. Let's go. Let's just throw it all out. We're never going to be done with the backlog anymore. So what is it that we're really trying to achieve? How do we know we're going to get there? This is when I really learned about OKRs. And that voice of when you go on a hike, you have a destination, it really stayed with me. And I realized that if you're going to be a leader, or if you're going to work in any company, like it's almost an unethical thing to just work and not have a destination. You have to know where that ladder is going. All right, so this is what you hear at Google. They say, you know, you should do it. If you're not using OKRs, you should. The thing is, if you read the statement, you'll see that an employee has a handful of objectives and ways to achieve that objective. Everyone can see everyone else's OKRs. Now, that's not really how people do OKRs. At Google, they have individual person level OKRs, and even Google will tell you don't do that. They just happen to do that because when they had 20 people, they did that with the 20 people. But you, if you're going to set OKRs, you really want to do it your way, and probably you should start at a company level or a team level or a business unit level or some kind of a level that makes sense. Could be a squad within a group that's got a product or whatever. But you don't want to just say, everybody write OKRs for yourself. Literally, some of the OKRs at Google look like find a house in Mountain View, which is actually a stretch that, that you could afford to buy because nobody can buy a house in Mountain View. I don't know why anybody would even want to live there between you and me. The houses are ridiculously expensive. But that's not an OKR that's related to your business. Finding a house in Mountain View. I mean, I guess then the employee can live there. I don't know. It's sort of I would say, a waste of people's time. It looks like a task when you're writing down individual level OKR. This is what I want to do. As far as why do people even do OKRs in the first place? I think there's a lot of possible reasons. My favorite is this. When OKRs are working well, it's like everyone has acquired fluency in a new language. This is the guy, Rick Clough, who's over at Google Ventures, who basically announced that Google uses OKRs back in 2014. And why do I tell you this? Well, we've really struggled with this. Like, how do we know an organization is doing OKRs well and getting value? And I'll tell you what, it's not directly correlated to how many OKRs you set. Because remember, I said less is more. So if anything, the fewer number of OKRs you have, probably the more value you're getting out of OKRs. Isn't that interesting? But that's not always true either. So there's not like this simple way of measuring how valuable your OKRs are. So what happens is I've been hired to do like goal setting workshops with organizations. And they said, but Ben, don't do OKRs. And I said, well, okay, you'll pay me, I'll do it, sure, why not? But it was always the same. And I don't take these workshops anymore because somebody writes down the goal, be the best in the class. I don't even know what that means. Improve brand awareness. And then the other one is like, reduce the time to, hire new people from X to Y or something. So when you say the word goal, everybody has a different idea of what that means. Is it a long-term goal? Is it a goal for me? Is it sort of a broad goal? Is it a measurable goal? I don't know. Is it a SMART goal? So I don't like to do that. Whereas when you say objectives and key results, we all know, we're going to know by the end of this workshop anyway. I know what an objective is. I know what a key result is. So no matter what team you're with, if we all use that language for talking about goals, we're speaking in the same language. It's similar to what you'll see at Salesforce. They use this thing called V2 moms. To some extent, it may not really matter what language you use, but as long as you're using a common goal language, that's a big win from OKRs. So even at Google, when they partner with somebody, they'll say, well, what's the objective for this partnership? How do we know this partnership's good? The objective will be as measured by, here are the key results that let us know that we're on track with our partnership. And let's publish that and let's hold each other accountable. Wow. And it'll be by the end of the quarter. So we're going to check in at the end of the quarter and say, how are we doing? That's a very different thing than saying, let's partner and solve the world's API problems or something, and then just hope it works and put a press release out. Okay. So let's go to the next one. Here is an example of what I call the output mindset. Because, and probably this is familiar to most of you, but I want to emphasize this idea. Because in order to be successful with OKRs, you really have to shift from an output mindset. Remember when I was talking with Jeff Walker, I got all these things I got to do. In an output mindset, your boss tells you update the blog. That's the project. So you start going out and doing a bunch of stuff. So these tasks. You don't really know what the destination is. I mean, update the blog doesn't really tell me what the destination is. Just go do something. I don't know why we're doing it. My boss told me we're supposed to update the blog. Seems like a good idea. Or I read an article that says, blogs are important. It's like you're climbing up the ladder, but you're not really sure where you're headed. For those of you that read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was a great book, I recommend reading it again, even if you've already read it. Begin with the end in mind, right? Know where we're headed. It's back to that destination. You're in an output mindset. We don't know what the big picture is. We're just doing stuff. We're checking boxes. Just get the stuff off my plate. Work can be overwhelming. Progress, and this is probably the worst of all, is subject to the opinion of leadership. I don't know how we're doing. I might think we're doing well, but it doesn't matter. What does my boss think? My boss thinks this or that. My boss's boss. They say that, oh my God, great, we're doing well. But those people can change their mind anytime. In an outcome mindset, we're beginning with the objective. We're telling you why the objective is important. So in this case here, improve digital brand awareness for Generation Z. That was a real objective for one of my clients. Well, why is that important? They're explaining that here in this almost illegible orange font. I apologize for these colors. But then you'll see that now it gets a little bit educational, right? You don't just say, we're going to improve digital brand awareness for Generation Z. Your next question should be why? Why would we want to do that? And so now we can explain why. Because Gen Z is the big influencers. We're going to lose customers. If we don't get Gen Z, we're going to risk market share. Ooh, okay, that sounds important. Now the key result, before I write tasks, I write, this is the key result. This is the measurement. I want to get to double the number of Gen Z daily blog readers. Now, whether that's the right key result or not, we could argue. But that's the key, one of the key results they chose. That's a measurable statement. And now we think of the tasks. And I'm thinking of the tasks that drive that key result. All of a sudden, instead of saying update the blog, I'm posting 3 blogs for Gen Z readers. I'm running tests on the blog landing page. I'm reporting blog subscriber demographics. I'm finding out how many Gen Z readers are actually, engaged. Now, if you look at here in an outcome mindset, we know why the objective is important. We have measurable key results, and key results have action plans. So this is a way of sort of flipping the thing on its head. If you look at this, this is from Christina, the author of Radical Focus, who really wrote the first book on OKRs. And I love her quote, if you complete all your tasks, but nothing gets better, that's not success. Success is things get better. And a lot of times we complete all the tasks, things don't get better. So what's up with that? We've got to focus on the outcome. If you look at these two worlds, if you're in an output mindset, there's just so much to do. What do? You prioritize whatever is easiest. It's like Space Invaders. It's coming down and you just want to get that stuff off before it gets you. And you maybe do whatever somebody yells at you and says, do this, so you do it just to get them off your back. Whereas here we prioritize work based on what we actually think will achieve the outcome. So we can have a conversation that's more strategic. Should we do this? Should we do that? Is it going to drive us toward the key result? We have a true north. Probably a lot of these things are worth doing. So I want to be careful, because it's not like you can't just say output mindset is bad, outcome mindset is good. Sometimes we got to have the output mindset. We got to just get stuff done, and that's okay. But we don't want all of our work to be like that, because then we have no real feeling of connection with the bigger picture. So more and more, one of the trends in OKRs is like teams are having just one OKR. They have all this work. In 40X, they call it the whirlwind. There's just all this stuff we have to do. That's just how the world works. But there's a little bit of energy that we can focus on moving the needle. What does that look like? Let's agree on that. Okay, the definition of OKRs. And I really want you to think of OKRs more as a verb. Okay, just a nomenclature thing. People say OKR, it's an objective with its key results. OKRs is the whole idea of what OKRs to me is all about. And to me, it's a critical thinking framework. And that means it's about asking a set of questions. It's an ongoing discipline, which means we always ask these questions. I was just on with a big organization, and they just said, well, can you change key results in the middle of the quarter? I said, it's an ongoing discipline. This is not budgeting, right? So think of agile, right? Of course, you can cross out a key result in the middle of the quarter. Actually, that's a good thing. We have friends over at LinkedIn that do that. They probably have about 10 to 20% of their key results that don't even survive the quarter. They just get crossed out. They're no longer a priority. That's good. I don't know that you want to add key results in the middle of the cycle. That's probably another conversation, but I think the idea of questioning things and what do we throw out is a good thing for OKRs. So the questions that we ask are things like this. Now there's actually more than this, but these are the 3 basic questions. And if you ask these 3 questions in a regular cadence, you are doing OKRs. You're saying, where do we want to focus to improve and make measurable progress in the near term, and why? At the end of this upcoming quarter or period, because one of the trends is also a lot of organizations, including PayPal, they've moved to 4-month cycles for OKRs. They found that having 3 planning periods in a quarter was plenty. There was no real incremental value of going from 3 to 4. It just sort of felt like more overhead. But anyway, whatever it is, the quarter, 4 months, it could be 6 months. it should not be, 2 years, right? I mean, there's supposed to be a pretty rapid cycle with OKRs. But how will we know we've achieved the objective, or at least how we know we've made progress against that objective by this period? And then what happens is people give you a to-do list. They start saying, well, we got to update the blog, we got to hire somebody, we got to, whatever it is. There's just things they need to do. Put a business plan together for why we need to buy the software. I mean, I see key results a little like that. I scratch my head. Like, that's not an outcome. That's just something you want to do. So we have to ask the question, what is the intended outcome of the task? In its most simple form, objectives and key results is objectives and key results. The objective is a one-sentence statement of where do we want to move the needle and why. It begins with a verb. It's qualitative. It doesn't usually have numbers. I guess it could have numbers, but it's not supposed to. It doesn't need numbers. And I put this in red because most organizations that do OKRs fail to define why the objective is important. We're now requiring that. And I would say it's moving toward becoming the industry standard in OKRs, whatever that means, but there is no real industry standard. It's an open platform. But I'll tell you, people are doing this, and everyone that does this finds it useful. Then the key results. How do we know we've achieved it? Well, I'm going to talk about metric, baseline, and milestone. But the point here is it's quantitative. There's a very clear way to measure progress. It's not subject to people's opinion. This is, are we achieving it or not? So in an OKR cycle, which is once you're doing OKRs, you do have a cycle of 3 steps. You're going to define your OKRs, you're going to check in, and you're going to reflect and reset. So I'm just going to go through those pretty quickly. First thing happens, you write your OKRs down. These are the problems, right? People write too many OKRs. They try to get all of their work into their OKRs. Like, well, I'm going to do this. Shouldn't that be in the OKRs? No, not necessarily. It's not about you and what you're going to do. This is about what is the most important area to focus. Again, I mentioned this already. They don't tell me why the objective is important. You got to do that. They don't have a consistent scoring system. So some teams say, well, this key result is green. Other teams say, well, this key result is 80%. Well, this key result is red. This key result is 0.5. I don't know what that means. Like, let's have a consistent way of talking about progress. They do need to have a person's name next to each key result. If you don't have a person's name next to the key result, to me, it's not a key result. But they don't have accountability. They just sort of write these ideas. Wouldn't that be cool? Who's going to talk about that key result in the middle of the quarter? We don't know. We didn't put a name next to it. So you have to do that. Those are simple, pretty simple things to do. But I want to emphasize when I say OKRs are not meant to be everything. A lot of people kind of freak out and say, well, then wait a minute. What about the other stuff? You mean there's stuff that isn't OKRs? Should we even do it? I'm like, yeah, there's stuff that isn't OKRs. And yes, you should do it. Because OKRs are just one part of the work plate that we have where we want to move the needle. We can't focus on everything. We can't move everything in the right direction all the time. Sure, a lot of bosses will say that that's what we should do. Talk to your boss if they say that. We can't have everything. They want you to focus. Health metrics, though, are the things that we're tracking and monitoring that are actually okay. So if your website is live 99.99% of the time, you don't need to write a key result called keep it at 99.99%. That's a health metric. We monitor it, we maintain it. It's not the focus for improvement. So some people, that's like a breakthrough. They're like, oh, you mean just because we measure it, that doesn't make it a key result? And I'm saying, yeah, key results are a special thing that we really want to focus on improving. And so here's the things that are tasks, right? Update the website, sign up form to request information. Okay, that's a task that might be important because it maintains the health metric of uptime, or it might be that it's important to drive a key result. In this case here, it's supposed to be a task that's going to drive some kind of key result that would potentially increase customer satisfaction, let's say. But it itself is not a key result. It's a task that's trying to drive a key result. The just do it's, I mean, look, I see people writing key results like complete the audit or install the HR software. These are things we just need to do. They're important, but they're not key results. They're not measurable outcomes that are moving the needle of our organization. They're just stuff we need to do. And it's like, well, but we do need to do them. I mean, if you don't complete the audit, the CFO goes to jail. Well, that's bad. But that's not an OKR. Okay. I just want to make sure we understand the difference between OKRs and not OKRs. So here's my pop quiz. So let's see if anybody can answer this. I guess you can just put your answers in the chat, but I love if there's somebody that's just dying to say something. Come on, speak up, because I love to hear from you. So create a job description for the account manager position. What do you think? Key result, health metric, or just do it?
Kelly says C.
That's correct. Just do it. How about this? Increase weekly data points per user from 400 to 600.
One Kelly says A, one Kelly says B.
We're going with key result. And the reason is we're trying to move the needle. We're increasing it from something to something. Now, if I just said maintain it in a range of 400 to 600, then it would be a health metric. So it's a little bit out of context. To be fair, it's a little bit confusing, but you hopefully get the idea. Install SAP 1 by the end of the quarter.
Lots of C's.
Yeah, it's a just do it. Of course, the joke here is it's a just don't do it. If you've ever installed SAP or worked at a company with SAP, you probably would understand that joke. And then maintain the average response time. What do you think? The one thing that we haven't said, right? Health metric.
Lots of B's.
Like, yeah, you guys get this. That's easy. And of course, if something starts with maintain, you're usually thinking it's a health metric. So the only one of these statements would actually belong potentially in a set of key results for an objective. But I kid you not, all of these statements are taken from my client's sort of approach of trying to write key results. So it's actually kind of hard. These are smart people, okay? It's kind of hard to write good key results. It's just something that takes a little bit of practice. The next thing that happens is step through the cycle. So what? We write our OKRs down now. Well, we have people's names next to each key result, but a lot of organizations just publish their OKRs and pretty much just go back to work. They set it and forget it. It's like kind of like my New Year's resolution, what I'm going to do. Maybe for the first couple of weeks, I'll be excited, and I'll be back to whatever I did. You want to have, what you don't want to do is start adding a bunch of meetings for OKRs. This will kill the program right away. Nobody wants to have OKRs if it means more meetings. So what you do is you integrate OKRs into existing team meetings. One thing I really like about what 3M did was they had their monthly one pager, and they put OKRs in the lower corner. So they integrated OKRs into their existing monthly one pager. They didn't say, we bought a new software system where you have to log in, don't forget your password, and you got to go in here and it's on your mobile device and it's these OKRs. I mean, nobody's doing that. We got too many things that we need to log into anyway. There's too many different places. I can't even get into their own SharePoint thing. So let's just stick with what we have. That's what's going on with step 2. And in step 2, often you'll have some kind of a standardized way, almost a militaristic way, at least at Oracle, it's almost militaristic. When you talk about a key result, if you're a key result champion, and your name is next to a key result, this is how you do it. You tell me, how did we do? Where are we on the key result right now? It's going to take 20 seconds. Then you're going to tell me, what is our percentage confidence that we're going to hit that key result by the end of the period? It can be 0%, it can be 50%, I don't care, but tell me what that percentage is. Tell me what's preventing progress. Is the key result driving the right behavior? Because if it's not driving the right behavior, maybe we need to cut it off, right? We don't want key results where they're gaming the system. I've seen it happen. I'm sure you have too. We're trying to get more mobile app downloads. Oh, wow, we're hitting the key result. But wait a minute, we're paying all these people in India to download our app. That's not good. That's not what we want to do. But sometimes that's kind of thing that happens. And then here are the upcoming action items. It should fit in this box. And what happens is a leader can look at this and their eyes might gloss over to here because they want to try to remove blockers. Or they might look at this and say, well, I just want to know what is our confidence score. So that way, even when you're talking, the leader can look and understand and ask questions. So that's the kind of thing that happens. Structured approach for the check-ins. And then reflect and reset is at the end of the cycle. Again, most organizations will just skip this entirely, or they'll only look back and point fingers and blame. IT didn't do this and all that kind of stuff. You want to schedule a reflect and reset session in advance. You want to have a clear agenda. And what you do is you reflect and reset, meaning you look back and then you try to capture learnings and apply that into the next cycle. And you do it on a key result by key result basis. So I want to show you just one key result for one of my clients. They wrote a key result, increase the partners from 100 to 500. And I was like, wow, that seems like a lot. They said, well, we can commit to 200. No problem, get 200. If we don't get 200, we fail. And I said, wow, you guys are really going fast. I said, yeah, I know. But then when I talked to them, they said, well, we're going to get 140. Basically, we scored a 0. We didn't even get to our committed level of 200. I said, what did you learn? They said, well, the partners pay themselves. They all paid $1,000 to become a partner. So they figured because they paid $1,000, then they would start selling. And that was the whole model. The business model was based on this. But what they learned was partners need more handhold. They can't just look at partner signups. This is not the right key result. So I said, well, what do we want to do? Keep, modify, or remove? And they said, we want to modify. And they started saying, like, what we want is more better partners. I was like, how do we know a partner is better? And then we started talking, and pretty soon it was pretty obvious. Partners that sold 3 certificates in their first month tended to sell more going forward. It was like they had to ramp them up. This is a classic story. And so now they changed their key results. So now their key result was focused on getting those partners ramped up in their first month and having more of a quality partner experience as opposed to a quantity. And I pause here because so many OKRs, especially if we do a reflect and reset. The key results, the lesson learned is it's not necessarily to get more all the time. We also have to think about the quality of what we're getting. And how do we measure that quality? This is hard because it's usually easier to measure quantities. But often we then pivot on our key results to try to focus more on whatever that quality is. Okay, so I wanted to give you a typical coaching conversation that I would have. Like, what does OKRs coaching look like? This is what I do right all day. And I want you to do this, but like, I really hope that coming out of this, you'll do some kind of a conversation like this with somebody. So I'm talking to this VP of marketing at a company where they're doing OKRs. And I say, well, what is the objective, right? This is my first question. Where do we want to focus our effort to drive improvement now? I was a marketing guy, so I can pick on these people. The guy says, delight the customers with relevant offers and communications, whatever that means. This is super broad. This is kind of how marketing people talk. But because it's an objective, it's very qualitative, it's big picture, I'm not going to challenge him. I'm just going to go right to the key results. Now, to be fair, I probably should have said, why is that so important right now? I didn't. This was in my early days. But I went to the step. How will we know we've delighted customers with relevant offers and communications by the end of this quarter? We need to add 3 new fields to the marketing database. I'll never forget this because I'm thinking to myself, this guy is all excited about adding 3 new fields to the marketing database. If I'm a customer, I don't even know you have a marketing database, and I don't care about what fields are there. This is totally removed from me. You're not delighting me at all. This is completely different than what I thought you'd say. But this is really more of a task. So I have to ask the question, what is the intended outcome of adding 3 new fields to the marketing database? Well, the guy says, well, so we can send better emails. I mean, Ben, we don't even have last purchase date. So we're sending emails out that say things like, we haven't heard from you for a while, when in fact, they might have purchased like within the week. So I said, okay, well, I get it. We probably should add 3 new fields to the marketing database. But anyway, how will we know that the emails are better? And the guy says, well, we have lots of metrics for that. So he shows me this dashboard. It was actually a HubSpot dashboard. And it was like, there's like 25 metrics. It was time on page, bounce back rates. I mean, all this stuff. I was like, wow, that's a lot of metrics. Not what I'm asking. I'm going to ask you again. How will we know that we're sending better emails? How will we know that these emails are delighting customers with relevant offers and communications? And the guy says, wow, that's actually a really good question. And I always thought that was kind of funny because it's a pretty basic question, right? I mean, we should be asking ourselves these questions. The reason I bring it up is we're so caught in all the work we're doing and we're so caught in all the data that we haven't really stepped back to say, how will we know that we're achieving the objective? It's a basic question. So the guy looks back at his objective and says, Ben, I think I get it. Relevant offers. See, if people open the emails, that means my offers are relevant. So I really want to improve the email open rate. So I say, okay, well, what is the email open rate now? And what do you want to improve it to? He says, I have it right here, 2.4%. I said, what do you want to improve it to? And the guy just starts laughing. He says, Ben, I thought you said you knew about marketing. You were a marketing guy or something. 2.4% is like way above average. I mean, anything above 1% is good. If you're above 2%, you're already at the top, practically possible you can get. So I said, well, that sounds more like a health metric. And he had already seen the training on OKRs versus health metrics. He said, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. That's more of a health metric. At this point, we got stuck. So I said, I tried this question. What is the most amazing thing you can imagine? I mean, suppose these emails were so good that the American Marketing Association called you up and said, we want to feature you as a keynote speaker at our conference because your emails were so good. We want you to share your success. And he said, well, it definitely wouldn't be, how many words I have in the email. It definitely wouldn't be the graphics of the email. I'm like, okay, well, don't tell me what it wouldn't. Tell me what it would be. Well, ultimately, we're delighting customers if we increase the revenue per email sent. I said, what's the most you can imagine we could increase that by? 20%. So I said, that's your key result. And I'll never forget this either. The guy said, whoa, I'm not signing up for that. I can't commit to that. That's not my key result. That's like, that would be totally amazing. That's not totally in my control. I said, okay. So we ended up having a conversation. The conversation looked like this. Here is the key result that we agreed on, a 10% increase. And we said, we will be very happy if that happens. That's a target. That's going to be really hard, but it's possible. This is the most amazing thing we could possibly imagine. I don't think it will happen, but we're throwing it out there. We're just going to write it down. And here is what we're going to commit to. What we're going to commit to, and originally he wanted to say, I'm going to commit to running 5 campaigns and reporting the results. And the problem I have with running 5 campaigns and reporting the results is that it doesn't really represent progress. In fact, at first he wanted to make that be the commitment, and he wanted to make the target be I run 20 campaigns and report the results. Well, again, we're just doing stuff, right? We're running campaigns and reporting the results. That might be a good thing to do, but I don't want you to write key results like that. I want you to really say, what is a good result? So we talked about, I guess, 2 successful pilots. That's what he said. And then I had to ask questions. How do we know the pilot's successful, right? And eventually we wrote down the exact specific, key result that tells me this is how we know we've achieved it or not. So in general, key results should be key results. They should not just be all results. People will ask me, well, Ben, can it be a key result to hire 3 people? And I'll say, well, how many people did we hire last time? Well, we hire 3 every quarter. Well, hiring 3 people, I mean, it is a measurable statement. I guess you could say we have 3 more people on our team. I get that. But if you already do that all the time, you don't need to write it as a key result because it's going to happen anyway. We're not just trying to log all the things that are going to be the results that we're going to achieve. What is the key result? Now, if you're a team of 3 people and you're an engineering team and you're trying to say we need to get our team up to 6 people by the end of the quarter, hiring engineers, that doubling your size, that very well could become a key result for your team. So I don't think you can say hiring people is or isn't a key result. It depends on the situation. Similarly, key results should be always specific and measurable. You can't just write key results like acquisition plus 20%. I saw a key result of this 10 use cases. I don't even know what that means. 10 use cases of what? Acquisition of what, right? What are we even talking about? So I call it the haiku of OKRs. Like, leave me guessing. Spell it out, make it measurable. Like you saw in my last example, lots of words. Results, not tasks. I think we've already exhausted that one. Clear. You really want to use basic high school English. And the reason is you're talking to people outside of your team. So you can't put in all these fancy acronyms that make you look smart. You got to write out what you're going to say. It is true that, according to goal science, when you write stretch goals, you tend to set more. You tend to set higher expectations. You tend to achieve more. So it's good to set stretch goals, but you need to score. You got to talk about what is the confidence score. So, for example, I like to say, well, okay, but bring me back to earth. What are we really committing to versus what's a target? Write that as a stretch, but bring me back down to earth. Bottom up. I really want most key results coming from the team as opposed to from the boss. Whereas objectives should come from the team. Objectives, the team lead is usually setting the objective, saying, here's what we need to focus on, here's why. The team then begins to think about how we know to achieve that objective. So let's do a quick pop quiz. And again, let me give you the context. This is one objective, which is delight our customers, both big and small. I had this client that had 5 objectives. This is just one of the key results underneath one of the 5 objectives. And they had like 5 key results for each objective. So imagine 25 statements like NPS 60 plus in Q4. How can we make that key result better? What's wrong with that key result?
Wendy says acronyms. Yep.
When I saw this presented at this company in Berlin, there were like 1,000 people in the audience. And there was another 1,000 people streaming it live. And the CEO presented this key result, and people were literally Googling NPS. And they found like 140 possible meanings for NPS. And of course, now many of us know it means Net Promoter Score, but how would you know that? And you don't even really know that. I mean, that's what you might think if you've heard of Net Promoter Score, but that's what they actually meant. In other words, spell out Net Promoter Score. It's really important to do that. Otherwise, you make people feel stupid. Anything else can be better with this.
Anders Newton's definitely saying, we don't know what the current NPS is. So, exactly. Where are we starting at?
Exactly. Is this increase it by 60 points, or is it end up at 60 or higher? And where are we now? And, it just doesn't make any sense. NPS 60 plus, it's just, you didn't give me a baseline. You didn't tell me where we are now. And what else? I mean, the objective says both big and small. So is this the NPS for the big or the small or both? I mean, I just don't know. It doesn't give me enough specificity. So
other improvements, no verb to start it. And Josh said it didn't reflect the progress, i.e. increase by X%.
Yeah, exactly right. All of those things are right. And actually, I'll never forget this conversation either. I talked to the CEO and I said, hey, for this key result, where are we now? And is this even possible to achieve in a quarter? And by the way, is this a stretch or is this something we're committing to? And is this for new customers or for old customers, or is it for big customers, or is it for small customers, or is it for a certain product, or what is this? So we had to talk, and we ended up with this. Now, the point I'm making by showing you this draft key result being so short, and look at this, a lot of words on the refined key result. OKRs coaching helps people get clear on their thought. And this is what we came up with. It tells me where we are, it tells me where we want to be. It tells me, well, it's only on new customers, which means within the first 3 months of purchase, and it's only in the USA. So when you say that, and then you define to me what a net promoter score is, by the way, I start to feel like, okay, wait a minute, now I think I get it. So we should be focusing on the new customer experience of customers in the USA, because they're the ones where we want to improve the net promoter score. That's starting to be more actionable. And so the key here is to define a small set of meaningful OKRs rather than just a massive list of like all the possible OKRs that you can come up with, which is what they were doing. They had basically just brainstormed a bunch of things and then presented it. So it was like, here's a bunch of half-baked ideas. And so the CEO was really clear on that. We're not going to do that again. We're not going to present a bunch of half-baked ideas, because think about it, you're wasting everybody's time now at scale. Okay, so here's some books on OKRs. I mentioned Radical Focus by Christina. I actually really like that. This Measure What Matters is really the classic. I think 10 times more Measure What Matters purchases than all of the other books combined. So it's really the default book you'd want to read if you were to look at an OKRs book. And by the way, if you do that, get the audio book. They do a really good job, because you'll hear from the actual CEOs, you'll hear from product managers, you'll hear from John Doerr himself. But probably 5 to 10 chapters will be all you need, because it's like any other business book. I mean, once you get through the first part of it, you get the idea. I wanted to point out that I've got a book coming. I wanted to show a couple key points, and then maybe we can go into the questions. How are we doing on time here?
I think we got at least 15 minutes left, so
Okay,
good.
so I'm going to go into a few of these things, but like we're going to get into a Q&A soon. So there's this new book I've just written. It's coming out this next year, and it's basically for OKRs coaches. So it'll be the first book that's trying to help you to become an OKRs coach. And whether you're working internally, to help your organization with OKRs, or whether you're actually advising other companies, you have clients that are helping, they need help with OKRs, which is what I'm doing. This is supposed to help you do that. So the first thing is that OKRs do not directly cascade. In traditional goal setting models, here's what the company says, here's what the functional team say, and it just kind of cascades down, and you're copying and pasting from higher levels to get your goals to kind of fit in the lower levels. And it's in its extreme, the company writes down objective, has some key results, let's say, but then different departments say, oh, I'll take that key result and I'll turn that into my objective. This is just not how you do it. Okay, so this is how not to do it. And yet there is some confusion in the OKRs community about this model, primarily because software vendors built it because it's easy to build in software. And also, this is really appealing if you're just starting to get a superficial understanding of something. This looks like, oh my God, great, we'll have one. This doesn't work. I'm just going to leave it at that. Here's what does work. Have conversations about why. Unfortunately, this is hard, and it's not a tool, and it requires people to actually talk to each other. But I'm trying to tell you that's what you need to do. In fact, that's what OKRs is all about. It's having these conversations, asking these questions. So if you try to automate that, you just miss the whole point of OKRs. So I'm not really a big fan, to be honest with you, of trying to automate or streamline the OKRs process. To me, that doesn't make any sense. OKRs it should be a thoughtful exercise where we ask questions and we dialogue. So in this case here, the company had an objective to expand into mobile products. They had their various key results. But in the data platform team, they needed to move some of their stores off of the legacy database. It really had nothing to do with expanding into mobile products. But nonetheless, this was the right objective for them. Because when the CTO talked about why this is important right now and explained that to the CEO who had set the company objective, the CEO said, oh yeah, I absolutely want data platform focus on that. That's where they need to move their needle. That verbal conversation is what means we have alignment, not the arrow that shows me how this box connects to that box. That's not going to mean that we have. I don't want you to become a victim of the system. And a lot of organizations do this. So I show that just to kind of illustrate that point. And then, I've got a few more things. I'll just show this to you because I think it's useful to see this. If you're ever doing OKRs, like this is how you do it. You first start with deployment coaching, then you do training, and then you get into the cycle. And this is where you do those 3 steps, right? Define OKRs, check in, reflect, and reset, repeat the cycle. You want to get to cycle coaching very quickly because this is where you really start to do OKRs. but this is the foundational stuff. And I'm going to just go over this really quickly. Here's what it might look like as far as if you're doing OKRs. This is how it might do. Deployment coaching might be month 1, but it continues a little bit in the future. Training might be really intensive in month 2, but then it might happen again a little bit later. But cycle coaching is kind of one of these things. It's like, it has a pattern, okay? And you need to help an organization. You need to somebody needs to help coach them when they're first getting started to get through their first cycle. Or we're finding actually 2 cycles. So the first cycle, they're kind of learning how to do it. The second cycle, you still need to have an external coach to get them going right. And then now they don't need to. There are different roles. I'm not going to go through all the different roles, but these are in phase 1, when you're doing the deployment coaching, this is what you have to answer. So in other words, if you try to embark on an OKRs program and you don't have the answers to these questions, you're in trouble. Okay, because that's basically like just hoping something works, or I don't know, like everybody has different assumptions. This is how you build the FAQs of your OKRs program. Where are we defining OKRs? How many will we set? These are like the rules of the road. How are we scoring key results? Is the cycle quarterly? Is it 4 months? Is it 6 months? Do we, what are the types of key results? Do key results all have to have numbers, or can some be like milestones? And I didn't cover that very well, but let me just do that by secretly sneaking over to here. So a metric key result that's not good looks something like that, but a good one looks something like that. A milestone key result that's not good looks something like this. All teams complete customer interviews. Notice there's no number here. It's just all teams complete customer interviews. That looks more like a task. Go out and do customer interviews. So I have to ask the question, if they have a customer interview, how is that good? And then they start talking and they say, well, it's about getting pain points and all that stuff. Okay. Well, how do we know we have a pain point? Well, it has to be documented into the system or whatever. Okay. If we get these pain points, what do you mean by all teams? And, anyway, you can start to see this is a lot of words. I'm not necessarily have to go over it, but look at, here's the commit. One team member from each of product design and engineering have had a conversation with a customer that identifies a pain point. No numbers in there. But nonetheless, this could be a key result because it still feels measurable of whether we know it's happened or not. And some people will argue you can't have milestones. I'm trying to say, yeah, you don't really want to have milestones, but sometimes in a quarter, it's all you can have. And it's still driving us toward an ultimate metric output. Maybe customer satisfaction, maybe retention, whatever it is. Baselines are the other type of key result, which is, okay, true story. I'm working with a big group, a data science team with like 80 people newly formed. And it's a big company. And I say to the data science team, so what's our key result? And they say, well, we want to hit 90% customer satisfaction. And I said, okay, well, what's the customer satisfaction now? And they said, well, I don't know, we're not measuring. So, okay, so what do you want to make it? Well, we should make it be measured and then achieved. That's actually not good because we don't even know when I asked them, who's our customer? We couldn't even know that. So how are we going to measure the satisfaction? What do you mean by 90%? We don't even know what the scale we're using. So without a baseline in place, you can't set targets. It's a common mistake. But what we do is we write here, first customer satisfaction survey sent to 100 or more stakeholders with initial results reported based on 20 valid responses. That's what we want. But look at the commit. The criteria for measuring customer satisfaction is established. The list of respondents is identified. It should be somewhere between 300 respondents. That's basically a task. You know what I mean? It's just go out and do this. But what I'm trying to say is from a commitment perspective, sometimes that's okay. But from a stretch perspective, we want to start to see something. Here we have 80% response rate from our first customer satisfaction survey with baseline score reported. Notice here, we haven't really moved the needle. But what's happening is the reason why I'm okay with baseline key results is sometimes we have to first know where the needle is, okay, before we can move it. So that's where baselines come into play. Baselines are very common when you're first starting with OKRs. So rather than saying, here is the set of metrics that we're currently measuring, which one should we improve? Sometimes you have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, we're not even measuring this. We should measure that. Now you can't do that with everything because it's a pain in the ass to measure things, but you're going to need to measure something most likely that you're not already measuring. And I want to give you permission to do that. All right, so that's probably all I have. I mean, I could keep on going, but I think that's enough discussion from me of just the nuts and bolts of OKRs, what you really need to know, crash course. So let's go into any questions that you might have.
Josh has one or a couple from the chat. Josh, I don't know if you want me to restate those or if you just want to ask them directly.
Thanks for talking. So
Josh, I think your audio's pretty bad.
Well, what I'll do here, Josh, I'm seeing them in the chat too. It's the, can you effectively implement OKRs from the bottom up, or do you need to first adopt them at the org level? I love that. And the answer is a little bit of it depends. Like I'll say that a lot of organizations, including that one that I mentioned in Berlin that I told you, I gave those examples. Those guys actually started it at a like mid-level place in their organization. But they knew, the CEO knew they were doing it. And the CEO even said, like, look, I don't want to do OKRs at the top level, of our organization until we've proven out that it works for your group. And actually, they almost spent a year doing that. And they actually were able to prove that it was adding value, it was working. They had some best practices. They knew it kind of worked. And so then they presented that to the senior leadership team and they said, do you think we should do it? And then they all agreed, yeah, we should do it. So then once the organization set the OKRs at the top level, that usually sets the stage for other groups to set OKRs. Of course, it depends on the size of the company and all that, right? Like I'm working with like Nike, for example. Well, I'm not working at the very top of Nike, the very senior most example. I'm working with a division or sort of a group that does, some high-tech product stuff within Nike. And so that's the sweet spot for them to use OKRs. Sometimes at the higher level of a company, it almost doesn't make sense to do OKRs because everything is just about hitting revenue numbers, global targets and things like that. It's all consolidated reporting. There's just different business units doing different things. And so trying to write a set of OKRs for all of that just doesn't make sense. The OKRs are basically at the top level, are basically better written as sort of a high level strategic balance scorecard, kind of a map thing that sort of says overall this is what we're trying to achieve. And then OKRs make more sense at lower levels in the organization. So it's kind of a mixed answer that I'm giving you. I mean, traditionally in a smaller company, top level OKRs are the place to start. So if you have a company with like under 500 people, you probably want to start with the top level OKRs and get the CEO involved. Even that's not always true though. So I always say, figure out the sweet spot for starting on an OKRs project with the idea in your mind that you should go to as high a level as possible to where it makes sense. I just got off with a group over at Walmart. And I also got off with a group of another company. I can't remember, it doesn't matter what the name is actually. But we were thinking, hey, should we have like the overall OKRs and then like each team has their OKRs? And what I'm finding more and more is when you ask that, you're often going to find no, you should not have the overall OKRs. You should have each team has OKRs. And overall, what we have is like a set of strategic statements or sort of a overall, long-term goals or something like that. And it may not make sense to have OKRs at the top level. So it's really a tough question, Josh. I said it requires a little bit of thinking. And what I like to do is I like to assume that the top level should set OKRs and then find out if that's true. But if the top level says, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so with my organization, we're trying to roll out OKRs, and we're 800 and change employees, but we've just started to try and roll those out across our product organization. But the way that we've attempted this to start, because we don't have top level buy-in on it, is we're trying to roll out OKRs at the individual level, and it just doesn't make sense to me that we're doing it that way. You've got individual objectives.
Yeah, I would say you're right. I mean, my gut reaction to this, Josh, is stop setting OKRs at the individual level tomorrow. Just don't do it. It's going to be creating too much overhead. It's going to be a waste of time. But maybe try adjusting courses to just like the product level or the squad level or some kind of a team, and write down like, here's the team's mission, here's the objective, here's why that objective is important, here are the measurable key results, and apply some of these principles, like put individual names next to those key results and say, you're the champion, and see if you can get success with that on a small group, right? Instead of getting individual level OKRs put into place. And then you can also make the pitch to the senior people. Here's what usually happens. If you're doing OKRs and it's working, the senior people are going to say, I want that too. Because what happens is those bosses, when they hear you talking in the language of OKRs, like with a standard format of saying, here's what we want to achieve, here's how we know we've achieved it, here's where we are, here's my confidence, these are the risks, oh my God, the bosses are like, thank you, right? This is how I've been wanting people to talk to me. I don't want them to talk to me like Ben was when he was in his early 30s and he would just go like, blah, 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 blah. That drives me crazy. But if you can talk to me in a way where you begin with that destination, so if you can model the practice of talking about OKRs in a way that's valuable, that's when it really starts to catch fire with leadership.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, and the second question was really about mechanisms to track on those, right? Delaying until the end of the cycle to measure. Obviously, you're going to fail most of the time in that regard.
I would say you have your options here, but I think that the best tip I have, I'm finding this to be the case, is sort of a minimal viable way of doing this, which is just have one formal mid-cycle check-in where basically everybody who's doing OKRs knows on this date, you will update that little template that says, here's where we are, here's my confidence score, here's what's happening as far as, you know, the risks or blockers, and here are the next steps. And just have that one and bring multi-teams together, but don't do an OKR readout. Say, hey, it's all here, here are all the updates. What we're gonna do is each team can do their own, you know, complete thorough readout to themselves. But then when you bring the multiple teams together, have them pick 1 or 2 key results to present with the group. And if they present 2, one of them is a big win, like this is where we're winning. And the other one is, here's something where we're learning. So people realize, oh, you're not supposed to achieve all your OKRs. It's fine if you don't, but what are we learning is really actually equally important to what are we achieving. And so that seems to be a good way to go. What you don't want to do is create too much overhead where people are saying like, you have to review OKRs every week or something like that. If anything, it's bi-weekly. Maybe you show the OKRs for a given team at the sprint, right? You bring it into the sprint process.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure. All right, come on. There's got to be somebody besides Josh that has a question. And actually, we can open this up too. It doesn't have to just be a question. Actually, what's really interesting to hear from is there a key takeaway? Did somebody have like, oh, I mean, I came in here thinking this, but now I realize that, or, oh, now that I think about OKRs this way, it means this, I'm going to approach my work in this other way, or whatever it is. We're interested to hear from you about what are the key takeaways, what's sticking with you as we just did this presentation. And you can throw it in the chat, or you can just speak up either way. Yeah, especially if you're doing OKRs, I'm really interested in hearing from you. If there's anything that came out of this presentation that can help you. If you're not doing OKRs, I'm kind of interested to hear, you know, does this make you feel like you should try OKRs, or is it like, oh God, this is going to be painful? I mean, this is just a good time to go around and hear from a few of you.
Yeah, I think one of my takeaways is the concept of, you know, the fewer OKRs you have, probably the more value you're getting, which of course, not a hard rule, but kind of a general rule. And I think that really just makes sense if like, we're all just need to get on the same page and make sure we're moving in the right direction. And that really resonated with me, that concept.
Good. And that's a really good one, because that's one of the mantras, less is more. And I really do want you to take this away. So like Josh said, maybe we kill individual level OKRs because we're just gonna have too many darn OKRs if we go all over the place. But if you can, even for a given team, you know, rather than having 5 objectives, each with 5 key results, get it down to like 1 or 2 objectives, each with like, you know, 3 or 4 key results, something smaller, more manageable. And that's going to represent focus. And as long as we remember, we're not trying to get all of our work into our OKRs, then that gives us permission to say, okay, where is the focus, right? That's good. Anyone else?
One of the key things I think for me was, I've struggled with this for a while since I read Measure What Matters, but not using cascading OKRs. It makes so much sense to me, especially in software, but I think just hearing it out loud again, like it doesn't work most of the time.
Right.
I think that's a key takeaway for me.
That's a good key takeaway, Josh. I will tell you, yeah, I know there's some sex appeal there, right? Like, you know, especially if you're like a linear mathematical kind of logical person, you're like, well, wait a minute, I need to see the boxes and I want to connect them. And then, you know, now I know we're aligned. When I was in graduate school, though, we did this thing called theory and use, or espouse theory and action. It was like, they're totally different. They're just disconnected. Like your behavior is not even necessarily related to what you say. And so what you say is the map of the OKRs on the wall, right? At the beginning of the quarter, like everything, look, that's what we're saying. But then you look at the behavior of what we're doing, it may not even be related to that. So the exercise of trying to build that map and try to connect everything, what's amazing is you can just realize that's a waste of time. We don't need to do that. That's basically turning OKRs into a compliance exercise of like connect the thigh bone to the knee bone. And then, you know, you feel, but in the end, it serves no value, but it's painful to realize that. So it's a great key takeaway. All right, so I'm sensing that maybe we're done. Andrew, do you want to give us the closing remarks and we can go into post OKRs presentation mode?
Yeah, that sounds great. I know Wendy had left one last comment saying she's got a team she's doing a reboot for. The team's been measuring output. Time to introduce OKRs.
Yep. Yep.
God
and
bless
like
you,
I said,
Wendy.
Yeah, that's going to be hard. Oh, let me put it this way though. I actually believe that, and I think I mentioned this before, like it's almost like from an ethical perspective, a really good thing to do. You are actually helping people. You're listening deeply when you tell them, hey, what is the intended outcome of that task? Some people will feel like, gosh, you're challenging me or whatever, but that's kind of a good thing. it shows that you care and you're trying to help them clarify what are they really trying to achieve? What is their destination? If you can help people to get more clarity about their destination, what I'm trying to tell you is that's a good thing. Like you're making the world a better place, because otherwise people are just doing stuff. But I want to tell you, it will be hard. Okay, Wendy. So it's a good key takeaway. And I'm saying good luck with that. And, just be ready to realize it might be tough, but hang in there.
Oh, they're a tough team anyhow, so.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll give you another metaphor that when I was at Dun & Bradstreet, somebody raised their hand. This was like after 45 minutes of trying to do this, because we divided in groups to try to be OKRs coaches. And she said, this is what it's like. It's like, I'm in a maze and I'm bumping my head against these walls in this dark dungeon. And I keep going down these paths, but I know there's like that pot of gold somewhere in the middle. And so I just stayed with it. And then eventually when you get to that key result and you really uncover it, and it's very well defined, it's like this, oh my gosh, it's exciting. It's like, okay, so that's what we're going to try to achieve. Now we can go to work, instead of like, oh my God, I got all this work to do. And what am I even trying to achieve? So if you can help people get that golden key result, any stories that you have where you felt like you were able to do that, send it to me on LinkedIn, connect me, because I'm always looking to hear from people about success stories, where you had that moment where you found the outcome.
That's what I was going to ask, Ben. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you if they want to continue the conversation?
The best way is ben@okrs.com. It's an easy email to remember. You could just send me an email and say, hey, listen, let's get together sometime. Also, I'm a big LinkedIn guy. So if you're really into LinkedIn, just invite me to LinkedIn. We can connect that way too.
Perfect. We'd love to get Ben back to Nebraska and maybe expand his palette a little bit more. So we'd be excited for that.
I have a vision of lots of wine and we're playing basketball, right? That's what's going to happen. And I'm just hoping there's no injuries.
That's right. Bring the ankle braces.
That's right.
So thanks so much, Ben. It was amazing. What a powerful tool. Definitely has helped me in my product career and a couple of different companies that I've worked with. So, take this stuff seriously. We'll drop the recording in the Slack channel. And again, this is probably the last Nebraska Product meetup for this year. So we should have some announcements relatively soon, as far as at least one coming up in early 22. And did want to give a quick shout out. One of our co-organizers, Sean, wasn't able to be here today, but his company got acquired over the last 2 weeks. So that's two co-organizers from Nebraska Product that have had acquisitions this year. So pretty excited about that.
Nice. All right. Well, awesome. Hey, one last comment on that is, if anybody does want to link it to me or send me a note, I probably can't do it right away, but at some point in December, in early January, my life gets slow. And I'm always happy to have conversations about, especially if you're doing OKRs, just you present me your OKRs. I can kind of give you some assessment reactions of like, okay, this is good. You know what, you can probably do this better. And I bet you for some of you, that'll be really valuable, and it's free. So it's not like I'm trying to say, sign me up for a 3-year engagement or something, but just, it's kind of interesting because we both win. Like, I'm learning about what's going on out there. I'm giving you some feedback. It doesn't take more than an hour, so it's not a big commitment. So think about that. If you're going to connect with me, that's probably the reason why. Other than it'd be fun to connect.
So Ben, would you also offer like coming to speak to like a community of practice meeting?
Possibly. I mean, this Nebraska thing that I'm doing with you guys now, I don't normally do it. Like, I'm not really trying to like generate new business. That's the funny thing, is like, that's the problem with coaching. It's not really scalable. Like, I can't take on a lot of new clients and really do a good job. Right. But I love, this type of a thing, which is just networking, best practices, talk about it. But if this leads to more presentations, at some point I'm like, oh gosh, I can't keep on offering the little free assessment follow-up thing, and then I don't feel like I'm necessarily that valuable. And so, yeah, possibly, but let's talk offline. Let's explore that.
Sure.
All right, Ben, thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.